Twin girls sobbed and begged, forced by stepmom to wash 500 dishes. Then Millionaire came home. The sound of clinking plates echoed through the large, dimly lit kitchen like a cruel rhythm of punishment. Two little girls, identical twins, no older than 10, stood barefoot on the cold marble floor. Their hands were red and wrinkled from hours in the sink, their small bodies trembling as they scrubbed dish after dish after dish. Tears streaked their cheeks, mixing with the soapy water as they tried to keep up with the impossible task before them. 500 dishes. That was the number their stepmother, Veronica, had set. Not because there were that many dirty plates, but because it was the cruelest way she could think of to punish them for something as small as spilling a glass of milk. Faster. Veronica's voice sliced through the silence, sharp as glass. She leaned against the counter in her expensive silk robe, sipping wine, a smirk curving her red lips. If those plates aren't spotless by the time your father gets home, you won't eat tonight. Lila and Lucy exchanged a glance, their eyes swollen from crying. Lucy's lip trembled as she whispered, "Do you think Dad will be home soon?" Lila shook her head weakly. "He said he's busy again. He never sees what she does." They'd lost their mother 2 years ago, a gentle woman who filled every room with laughter and warmth. After her passing, their father, Daniel Morgan, a real estate magnate with more money than time, remarried Veronica, a woman whose beauty could fool anyone who didn't look close enough to see the coldness behind her smile. To the outside world, Veronica was perfect, charming, sophisticated, graceful. But when the doors closed, she became something else entirely. The twins were treated not like children, but like burdens. Every chore, every insult, every cruel demand was their lesson in gratitude. Hours passed. The girls' small arms ached as the pile of dishes finally began to shrink. Lucy could barely stand straight. Her knees wobbled as she tried to keep up. Lila reached over to help her, whispering softly, "I'll do the rest, Luce. Sit for a minute." But Veronica's sharp eyes caught the moment. She slammed her glass onto the counter, spilling wine across the marble. "What did I tell you about helping her?" she snapped. "You each have your share. She learns her lesson alone." The twins froze, silent, terrified. And then, outside, headlights flashed through the kitchen window. Veronica straightened immediately, fixing her robe and wiping away the wine. Her mask slipped back on. The elegant smile, the soft tone, the perfect wife act. "Girls," she said, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet, "hurry and clean up. Daddy's home." The front door opened, and Daniel Morgan stepped in, tall, poised, still in his suit from the day's meetings. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes not from work alone, but from years of emotional distance. "Daddy." Lucy tried to run to him, but Veronica's hand on her shoulder stopped her mid-step. "Let your father breathe," she said with a fake laugh. "The girls have been playing house all evening. You wouldn't believe how helpful they've been." Daniel gave a weary smile. "That's nice to hear." He kissed Veronica's cheek absently, then turned to his daughters. "You girls doing okay?" Lila forced a smile. "We're fine, Daddy." Something in her voice, too small, too broken, almost made him pause. But Veronica wrapped her arm around his, leading him toward the dining room. "Come, dear. Dinner's ready." The girls weren't invited to eat. That night, as Daniel and Veronica dined in the next room, Lila and Lucy sat quietly in their shared bedroom, their tiny stomachs growling. Lucy clutched a worn-out teddy bear, their mother's last gift, and whispered, "Do you think Mom can see us?" Lila nodded faintly. "I think she's watching. I think she knows we're trying to be brave." In the weeks that followed, their father's work trips became longer and Veronica's punishments harsher. The twins did everything from scrubbing floors to polishing silver until their fingers bled. But one day, everything changed. Not with a shout or a fight, but with a whisper overheard. Daniel had returned home early, earlier than expected. He stepped into the house quietly, phone in hand, still talking to his assistant about a deal. But as he passed the kitchen, something stopped him cold. He heard crying. Not the soft kind of sobs children make when they're tired, but the kind that shatter something inside you. He peered through the doorway and froze. His daughters, his little girls, were on their knees, surrounded by stacks of dishes, their hands red and raw, their faces streaked with tears. Veronica stood behind them, holding a wooden spoon, shouting words he couldn't even fully process. For a long second, he couldn't breathe. Then something inside him snapped. "Veronica?" His voice roared through the kitchen like thunder. The spoon clattered from her hand, and her face turned pale. "What is going on here?" She stammered. I was just teaching them responsibility." "Responsibility?" His voice cracked with fury. "They're 10 years old. For God's sake!" "Their hands." He knelt beside the twins, taking their trembling fingers into his palms. "What happened to you?" Lila couldn't even answer. She burst into uncontrollable tears. Lucy buried her face in his chest, sobbing. Daniel's chest tightened as guilt flooded through him like fire. How blind had he been? How many nights had he chosen work over listening to his daughters? He turned to Veronica, his voice low, shaking. "Get out." Her mouth fell open. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean pack your things. You're done here. You will not speak to my children again. Daniel." "Now." The twins flinched at the sound, but for the first time it wasn't fear. It was relief. Veronica's perfect composure cracked. She muttered something under her breath, but Daniel didn't care. He stood firm, his arm around both girls, his heart breaking for what they'd endured under his roof. When the front door slammed, silence fell over the house. A deep, aching kind of silence. Daniel sank to his knees on the floor, pulling both girls close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered over and over, his voice trembling. "I should have protected you. I should have seen it." Lucy looked up at him through teary eyes. "It's okay, Daddy. You're here now." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He stayed awake watching them, holding their small hands in his as if afraid they'd disappear. He saw the bruises, the scratches, the marks of neglect, and something inside him hardened. The next morning, everything began to change. Daniel canceled his business meetings for the first time in years. He walked his daughters to school, holding their hands proudly in public. He replaced their old toys, repainted their room, filled their empty shelves with books and soft light. But more than that, he filled the house with laughter again. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the twins began to heal. Lila started painting again. Bright, colorful drawings of things she wished she could touch. Lucy started singing softly in the mornings, her voice shy but beautiful, like sunlight peeking through curtains. One afternoon, Daniel came home with a surprise. A rescue dog. Small and scruffy with sad eyes that mirrored their own. "His name's Lucky," Daniel said, smiling, "because he finally found a home. Just like us." The girls laughed for the first time in months. Real, joyful laughter. And as Daniel watched them chase Lucky across the yard, their hair flying, their faces bright again, something shifted inside him. A realization that wealth meant nothing without love, and that the greatest riches he'd ever have were right in front of him, holding his hands and calling him Dad. But fate had one last twist waiting. Months later, Daniel took the twins out for dinner at a small local restaurant, one of those cozy places with warm lights and the smell of fresh bread. The waitress who came to their table smiled kindly at the girls. "You two look like sunshine," she said. "I used to have twin girls, too." Her eyes softened, distant with memory. As the meal went on, the twins noticed the woman's hands. Calloused, tired, but gentle. She reminded them of someone they couldn't quite name. When she brought their dessert, Lucy suddenly said, "You have kind eyes, like our mom." The woman smiled faintly, blinking back tears. Then she must have been a very good woman. Later that night, when Daniel left a tip on the table, the woman picked up the bill and froze. He'd left a note with it. "Thank you for your kindness. Sometimes a simple smile heals more than you know." And beneath it, a check enough to change her life. Because Daniel knew kindness deserved to be multiplied. He had learned it from his daughters, who never stopped forgiving. From their small, brave hearts that turned pain into grace. From the quiet truth that no matter how broken a home becomes, love, real love, can rebuild it stronger than before. The house that once echoed with cruelty now hummed with laughter, music, and hope. And if you ever passed by in the evenings, you'd see two little girls and their father washing dishes together. Not as punishment, but as a promise. A promise that they would never again cry alone.